40 years ago in 1972, the African People's Socialist Party was founded by our next speaker, the leader of the Uhuru movement, chairman of the African Socialist International, leading the worldwide struggle for the liberation and unification of Africa and African people worldwide, Chairman Amalia Shitela.
Uhuru, comrades. Earlier today, after the first part of the session on today, Comrade Sister Tammy asked me if I were going home to change my shirt. I didn't quite get it, you know. I think she asked me if I was going to change clothes before coming back to the meeting. She looks out for me. She wants to make sure that I, have enough time. But the shirt, do people here know where the shirt is? It's the flag of Ghana. And so, that's the reason that I got it. I wanted to say that this is an extremely important plenary, and I can't overstate the significance of, again, this period that we are so lucky to have an opportunity to struggle in. It gives us this incredible opportunity to intervene in history, to move away from this place of just being bystanders, the world passing by, but just a critical moment in history so that what we do can make all the difference in the world. I also wanted to mention to you that the African National Congress in South Africa is experiencing its 100th anniversary this year. And they kicked off their anniversary with a golfing game, literally. And where all these people with Mercedes-Benz, and not just Mercedes-Benz, but I mean elaborately expensive vehicles, come to this town. They play a round of golf. I mean, they have a round. Literally, this is the truth. They had a golf tournament that these people played in, and that's how they experienced their 100th anniversary. That's the first day of it. That's how they opened it up. That's a statement about what social force they represent in the world. I mean, you think about golf anyway, that takes all this land, all this territory that people could live on, could grow food on, etc., and chase this little white ball, what an extraordinary thing. Also wanted to mention that that we should really be alert, and I'm extremely concerned about the posturing that this government and much of the imperialist world is involved in around Iran. I don't think it's something that we can take lightly. The bullying, the threatening, because of what they characterize as Iran's nuclear program. And it doesn't matter that here you're talking about the U.S. with the nuclear capacity to destroy the world many times over. It is shameless, and it doesn't matter. And in fact, they don't care that you know that. Their assumption is that they got the guns, and they can make things happen based on that. But there's a real contest that's happening in the world that makes Iran a threat. And there's history there too, because we talk about the resistance started in 1492. Well, the aggression against Iran didn't start in 1492, but the truth is that this government overthrew the elected government in Iran in 1954, somewhere around that time, and Mohammad Mossadegh was elected by the Iranian people, and the United States government overthrew that government and put in its place this tyrant, the Shah of Iran, who committed horrible atrocities against the people of Iran and functioned as a military outpost for U.S. imperialism in the Persian Gulf, protecting the Persian Gulf and the oil interests. And that's one of the things that makes this period so interesting, is because the Iranians saying, if you mess with us, we'll close down, the Gulf. We'll make it impossible for oil ships to move through that. But, that's a lot of struggle going back and forth there. But I think it's really important to be aware of Iran. And Iran, I think, announced that it's involved in the second development of a second nuclear installation. And it's absolutely how the bourgeoisie defines it. They call it defiance. They call it Iranian defiance. They speak of Hugo Chavez as being defiant. Like there's some naughty children who doing things that they're not supposed to do. And of course, in the school system here, they have this thing that they call defiance, that they use against African children all the time, being defiant. How dare you? So I just wanted to mention that, and because I'm not quite sure how we will try to move on that. The Black is Back coalition, of course, is something that we have to look at, trying to do something, some kind of intervention on this question of Iran. And it's unfortunate that up to now we haven't developed a real capacity to intervene in this country the way we should be able to intervene, to make them have to deal with questions right here on the ground, as opposed to feeling like they can spare forces that they could be using to kill people in Iran. This is a really important discussion. I've sat here and listened to and participated, of course, in discussions that's been happening throughout this process. I want to really thank Comrade Diop Olugbala. I want to thank Comrade Diop Olugbala for his participation in this conference, and for what I truly believe is a real serious effort to become the revolutionary that we need during this era. I think the comrade really struggles with that, and I appreciate that really in a very serious way. And so I wanted to say that. And also, and because in many ways, Comrade Diop is able and willing to make necessary sacrifices, which is a crucial kind of thing, because you can't make a revolution without sacrifice. You can't make a revolution if the first thing or the primary thing on your mind is your own security, your own self. You have to have the ability to put the interests of the masses, the interests of the people, as a priority, more important than yourself. That's all revolutionaries have had that ability. And it doesn't mean that we are reckless or that we can be reckless, because that's irresponsible to be reckless. It doesn't mean that we would take all the training and ideological and organizational training that's been invested in you and go and throw it away by doing something reckless that could end in your destruction or permanent imprisonment because of something silly. That's not what I'm talking about, because we have a responsibility to survive as well. But the fact is that we survive to make the revolution. I was talking to Comrade Diop earlier today. I think it was today. And where we were talking about health and things like that. And I used to be a serious smoker. I used to smoke cigarettes. And I was telling him that, it wasn't enough for me to know, or somebody to tell me, that smoking cigarettes would kill you. Because, hell, I live in America. I'm an African. I live with this all my life. And in some ways, I think we get attuned to that. We get used to the fact that, that death will come to us, and death will come early. That's not even something that we give that much thought to. We don't even have to see rappers in our dreams to get accustomed to that. But the thing, and people would always tell me that I should stop smoking. It used to be so pathetic because, we'd be having these meetings and, again, like at some poor solidarity forces house or at a meeting, and all the solidarity forces would try to sit next to the open window, no matter how drafty or cold it might be, because half of my presentation is going to be made speaking around the cigarette, like in my mouth. And so, I mean, but the thing that stopped me from smoking was not self-preservation, because if you smoke, you might die. It's because once, I was running across the street here in this city, and I was flat-footed. And it shocked me that I was flat-footed. And what that helped me to understand is that smoking cigarettes had an impact on my ability to make the revolution. That's the thing that told me that I had to stop smoking. I was the one who, in every demonstration, we'd have a demonstration a couple of blocks long, and I'm running up and down the demonstration, making sure things go, and I was flat-footed. So that's the thing that stopped me from smoking cigarettes. And the day after I stopped smoking cigarettes, I stopped drinking. Not because I was experiencing the same thing from drinking as I was from smoking, but I was smart enough at that time. Drinking hadn't done enough damage to my brain to prevent me from understanding that even though I wasn't experiencing some consequences of it that was obvious to me, that I was pickling my brain. And that was going to impact on my ability to do the work. And so it's not, when I talk about being able to make sacrifices, in some ways even that can be considered like a kind of sacrifice of what appears to be some immediate pleasure, because I liked smoking cigarettes. I didn't stop smoking cigarettes because I developed emphysema and stopped liking. I liked smoking cigarettes, and I liked drinking beer, and etc. But I stopped because of what it meant in terms of my ability to make the struggle. And I just want to say that I think that Comrade Diop really struggles with being the revolutionary that we need at this moment, and is capable of really trying to make different kinds of sacrifice. Now, when this meeting is over, we'll have another discussion with Diop. but the point is that I really appreciated your presentations and your presence. I appreciate. Because I'm hard to get along with on idea. I appreciate this incredible campaign for mayor. I appreciate your campaign. I like what Chimaringa did. I like what Brother Aaron's daddy was able to do, bring a certain element of professionalism. But you carried that campaign the way we wanted you to carry it, the way I wanted you to carry that campaign. And we had regular discussions about this is how we got to do it. This is what, and Diop did it. And nobody could have done it better than what Diop did. Nobody could have done it better. And our weakness was organization, just as we said. This was something that we struggled around. Our weakness was organization. Because in many ways, and organization to the point that we really still don't have a summation of that campaign that could benefit everybody if we had it, right? But we, in many ways, I call that campaign a serious victory. Because it wasn't about the numbers. The numbers required organization. To get the numbers that we wanted. This is what we've always said, that there's a big difference in being able to hold rallies and things like that, right? But the electoral process, engaging in the electoral process requires something different. That's what Chimaringa went in there to try to help bring that component, like into the work. But the thing is that we didn't have that organization ability, but to take people to the polls. Because the fundamental thing is to get people from where they were in an election, to get people from where they were physically to the poll when we needed them to be there, and we just didn't have the organizational ability to do that. And the line by itself won't work. The line by itself wouldn't do it. We didn't have the organization. We didn't have certain kinds of resources where in the absence of physical organization we could constantly be winning and courting and helping people to get where they needed to be. So that was a weakness of ours. But thousands of people saw and heard it. And they heard, rational argument. They heard a discussion that the bourgeoisie was incapable of engaging in. We're talking about the person, the woman, the Republican candidate. I forgot the question that she was referring to, but she was saying how somebody had the right to exercise, that somebody saying something was exercising their Fifth Amendment right, for free speech. This is who, this was a Republican candidate. And none of them had anything to say. There was nothing creative, nothing that solved problems or any other kind. But Diop's did. And everybody was seeing it. People saw that. The videos, the televised programs, etc., the debates that went on, it was seen. And I'd say that he did an incredible job. And that was the party. And that was one form of struggle that the party engaged in. The thing is being capable to engage in all forms of struggle. Legal struggle, illegal struggle, above ground, underground, electoral, every form of struggle. That is what the party has to be able to do to win this revolution. And I just wanted to express profound appreciation because Diop represented this party, this movement, and the African population, working class, in extraordinarily great fashion. And so I wanted to say that. Also, I really appreciate having an opportunity to salute the comrades in the Solidarity movement again. Some of whom, I've known, like for a long time and longer than others, and even had some of whom I've known at a time when I was an organizer of sorts, doing the kind of stuff that Diop and other people have been called on doing. I was doing some of that kind of stuff, comrades like, like Ruby, who we used to refer to as Ruby the Red, who, I don't know if you saw any of those pictures back there. These are people who were tested, like really tested, and who the police, see her back there got an arm lock, and that was either before or after they had her belly down with the knee in the back of Ruby, when engaged in this struggle at Tent City in Oakland, California. I just use Ruby as an example. There are other comrades who, could use similar examples. I mean, and you've heard me talk about Comrade Sandra Thompson, who, when we met her, was a reporter for an opportunist radio station, the name of which I won't call, and who came out to cover the homeless struggle we were involved in, and who began to like being around us and what have you, and spent the night at one of these houses that we had taken occupied for this mother and her children, homeless mother and her children. And the place was attacked by the police. And they took Sandy to jail. And I said, damn, that's the last we'll see of her. I sure hate that that happened. We were going to win her eventually. And Sandy said, hell, that's what won her. that's what made her want to be a part of the thing, There are other comrades, it's just an incredible history. But I want to say this. Allison, where is she? Oh, she went to the airport, and I was going to say something nice about her, not just because I get to stay in her apartment from time to time when I'm in Philadelphia, but real hardcore person, and Kitty who went to jail over in Walnut Creek. Did you go to jail in Walnut Creek? Who went to jail in Walnut Creek? I know Penny went to jail in Walnut Creek, and Janice went to jail in Walnut Creek. You, well, yeah, but you were a troublemaker, Kitty. I'm going to say this in passing. We were having these serious struggles with the white left. They were just notoriously bad. And the Spartacus League was one of the organizations we were engaged in this struggle with, because the Spartacus League raised the question of fighting the Klan as the critical, issue. They couldn't deal with imperialism. And what I mean by that, although they are the most ultra-Marxist, ultra-leftist of all of them, in San Francisco, there was this plaza. It may be called United Nations Plaza. And at United Nations Plaza, they had these flagpoles with all these different flags on it. So they got this Negro member of the Spartacus League and dressed him in a Union Army uniform. Like unions during the Union and Confederate War. And they had this Negro climb the flagpole that contained the flag, had the Confederate flag on it. And the Negro climbed the Confederate flag, climbed the flagpole, and removed the Confederate flag and replaced it not with the hammer and the sickle, right? Replaced it with the regular imperialist American flag. So this was the Spartacus League. It is the Spartacus League. They can quote Marx and Lenin and Engels and Trotsky better than anybody. They hate the police state, etc., except when they got a Negro who can climb a flagpole. And then there's one other circumstance we saw them not hate the state. And that's because in this city, and I've forgotten the year, Chimarenga would know, when the Klan said they were going to march in the city of St. Petersburg, and we suggested that would be a bad idea. And they came into this city and they marched and they had a rally on City Hall steps. And the Africans came out with some inspiration and came out and they whooped the Klan's butt out there and chased the Klan out of town. So the spots were going, having these meetings everywhere, talking about we beat the Klan, we defeated the Klan, and they were holding about how they defeated the Klan in St. Petersburg, Florida. So, and they had this event they were having at the University of California, Berkeley. And Kitty was a part of some forces who went with us to see them. We wanted to go to their event and ask them about whooping the Klan here in St. Petersburg, Florida. And I hope you understand, I made the point earlier that the Klan really ain't the point anymore. That ain't really the issue. The issue, of course, is that these guys are going to build themselves, and they're going to take struggles we were involved in. And so when we got there, first they didn't want to let us in and that kind of stuff. And somehow the confrontation got physical. And Kitty, y'all saw that picture up there again that Lisa Watson said, that looks cool. Let's do that some more, right? And Kitty did a front kick and hit this guy from the Spartacus League. It must have been in the nose or someplace because blood went everywhere, right? And then Biko Lumumba was there, and Biko is a formidable force. I mean, Biko was a big guy, and plus Biko was fearless. This guy would really scrap and what have you. So the Sparts, who hate the state, call the police. And Biko was arrested. I don't know, were you arrested in that time? Biko was arrested. And then they ran an article in their newspaper, Workers' Vanguard, and on the front page, they had this guy bloodied up, the picture, and saying, look at what the Uhurus did to us, and I don't know, I would have done that myself. But look at what the Uhurus did to us, and they didn't say Kitty did it, and said that the reason they did it to this guy is because that they're racist, and this guy was in an interracial relationship with an African woman. That's what the article said, and I'm sure So we went and said, okay, who's involved in the interracial relationship? We're going to give you a bloody nose. But Catherine was involved in that. But I want to say that Comrade Penny Hess is, I believe, the most principled and politically honest person that I know. And somebody who really struggles and on every front. Penny is there. No matter what the work is, Penny is there. Penny's trying to make the work happen. She does the work. And then she is not immune to self-criticism nor to criticism, and will lead it. She will criticize you. She will criticize, but she is not immune to self-criticism. And she's always involved in that. So I think that this is really important. And she also struggles to really uphold the line. This meeting is important for 1,000 different reasons. You've heard us say during this process how we used to be the weird ones, the outcasts. We've come through a politic that we saw the African liberation movement obliterated, wiped out, not just in this country. They killed Lumumba the same time frame that they were preparing and engaged in harassing and questioning the movement here. They killed Patrice Lumumba. They overthrew Nkrumah. They were wreaking havoc throughout the African world, and they wiped us out. In just I think 1968. I think more than 300 members of the Black Panther Party. I'm just talking about the Black Panther Party. Were arrested throughout this country, and more than 30 of them were killed. And that year alone. And as I mentioned, the Attorney General at the time had declared that by the end of 1969, the Black Panther Party would be destroyed. This is the U.S. government declaring that it's going to use all the forces that it had at its command to destroy the African Revolution. And it did that. And December 4th, 1969, of course, the most notorious thing that most people are familiar with is the murder of Fred Hampton. And our movement was effectively silenced as a consequence of that struggle. And it's interesting because much of the white left really emerged at that time. And part of the reason it was able to emerge was over the graves and incarceration of the African forces, because it was the African movement that really was the movement in this country that the U.S. government had to deal with and wipe that out, and they had effectively destroyed the revolutionary sector of this movement in this country. So we were gone. We're not supposed to be here having this discussion today. And then when we in the process, because the party never stopped, never was crushed as an organization, though we went through all kinds of difficulties. And so what has happened is that every front, after the destruction of our movement, the white left in various forms, the bourgeoisie and all of its media, etc., would characterize us as these dinosaurs from the 1960s. Don't you know that kind of stuff is over? Many young people who were in school were laughed at and told by their professors, oh, I used to do that kind of stuff back then too, but ha ha ha, they sort of outgrown it, you know? And what has happened, of course, is the crisis of imperialism has continued. We had to contend, like with Marx and Engels and Lenin, that books, we're talking about revolutionary struggle, changing our condition, people were throwing books at us. And so, and we had to contend with all of that. And here we are today. But almost everything that they said they believed in then, almost everything that they said they believed in then, proven to be untrustworthy. And what's happened in the real sense is that what we've learned is that the Russian Revolution in many ways was a diversion. In terms of, this was the only thing that gave legitimacy to the white left. If it hadn't been for Lenin and Trotsky and the Russian Revolution, you couldn't have had a white left that knew everything better than anybody else in the world. That was a kind of diversion, because that made them the custodian of revolutionary science, revolutionary consciousness, revolutionary legitimacy, and the whole bit. And so that's the kind of swimming upstream that we were involved in, trying to make this movement and et cetera. Had to go against all of that. But today, what we find is there is no Soviet Union. China is gobbling up resources all over the continent of Africa. And I'm not undermining the significance of China as a contender for hegemony in the struggle with U.S. and Europe, but it is, in fact, an imperialist on the rise. It's an imperialist entity on the rise. And as we quoted on yesterday, Fukuyama is talking about the left doesn't have any answers. And one of the most extraordinary things is the absence of the left in this whole discussion. Where is the left? He said the Marxists are in nursing homes. Right? Where is the left? And I'm saying this because what has happened is that as quietly as it's kept, African internationalism is the response. And if you look at what we see with the Muslims, Islam, I'm not a Muslim, I'm not religious at all. At all. But the thing that makes Islam such a threat to the imperialists is that with the collapse of the quote-unquote communist movement, the only internationally unifying philosophy embraced by poor people in all these places around the world where imperialism is trying to dominate has been Islam. Jihad, right? So that's what they're fighting everywhere, It's been Islam up until now. Because increasingly what is the case is that they have to deal with African internationalism. They deal with it in the mayor's election. They deal with it in the white communities as a consequence of the work that APSC is doing. They deal with it, throughout this country. They are having to deal with it in Canada. They have to deal with it in the Bahamas, the little Bahamas, which has been, really like an island, industry for imperialism that's simply been turned over now to African managers. They have to deal with it there. They have to deal with African internationalism in Colombia and South America. They have to deal with African internationalists in West Africa, in East Africa, in Southern Africa. They have to deal with African internationalism. It's being articulated in Brussels and in Belgium, in Germany, in France, in the United Kingdom, African internationalism. And so what is happening is that's really incredible, and I'm just reminded of it. All these discussions that we're having, here, is that it is helping to continue the development and dispersal of a body of theoretical works and interventions around the world. So, they're looking at Islam right now as this big boogeyman because they don't have to deal, like with the so-called communist movement. But increasingly, it is clear that African internationalism is becoming the international philosophy that unites Africans and other peoples around the world in opposition to imperialism. And the other thing I would mention is this, because we see a lot of people, for example, who are capable. Somebody said recently that people can come out and they can say, okay, they can be against this or that, but they can't be against the government around particular issues. But they can be against the government. There are people and white people, who come out against the government. They come out against the government in this way, against policy. They come out against particular policies that governments pursue. And that's not enough, because imperialism is not a policy. They are not against imperialism. That's what they're not opposed to. So to say that they're against the government isn't saying too much. You know, they have to be against imperialism. They have to be opposed to imperialism. That's the question. And then beyond that, I think it's really important for us to understand that the solidarity movement, Comrade Chairwoman Penny Hess talks about unleashing, I think, something like the stolen resources from Africans and other people. Well, what is the basis of the crisis of imperialism right now? Except the struggles of oppressed peoples around the world taking back their resources. And APSC functioning in that capacity in the North American community, in the world, contributes to deepening the crisis of imperialism. So what you're doing is the same thing that they're concerned the Iranians are doing, that the Venezuelans are doing, that other people around the world are doing, taking back the resources, and that contributes to the deepening of the crisis of imperialism. So that's part of the intervention that I wanted to make. I didn't really have that much to say, except that I think that this discussion and these discussions, Penny is going to be in Germany. She's going to Germany Thursday, I think it is. And in Germany, the comrades want Comrade Penny Hess to come to Germany. Comrades contacted us, the people who were doing Occupy D.C., they contacted us and said, hey, can we get Penny Hess to come to speak at Occupy D.C.? And that didn't work out for whatever reasons. And now the comrades who lead our work in Europe, the ASI in Europe, say, we want Comrade Penny Hess to come to Germany. You know why they wanted to come to Germany? And this is during the anniversary. You know, the 17th is the anniversary of the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. So we got all these mobilizations by Africans, particularly tied to Congo, in action. And so there's this event that's happening. And the reason they want Penny Hess to come to Germany, and it was implicit in the statement that was read by the Secretary General, Louise Kinshasa, is the fact that in Europe and in much of Europe, you have a situation where the white left has always defined for the African population what it is and how we should perceive the world. So we want to make that struggle, and we want Penny Hess to come and be a part of that struggle for the white people who inevitably are going to show up at these mobilizations and things that we're going to be doing in Germany. We taken African internationalism around the world. This is an incredibly significant movement. It was we who were on the defensive for the last 40 years almost. We were on the defensive, ideologically, politically, on the defensive. It's they who, you know, I got up in my office now, every volume that was written by Lenin. I got volumes by Mao, volumes by Karl Marx. Now there is a body of theoretical works, African internationalism, that reinforces our practice, and there's a body of practice that's tied to African internationalism that's being spread throughout the world. This is a critical moment in history, and this is really important what it is that we're taking on today. And I do hope that we understand that, and that's why we take it everywhere we go. Let's make this struggle, because it is true that it is material reality that is responsible for the ideas in the heads of people. Matter is primary. I am a materialist. I believe that matter is primary. But that doesn't mean that ideas are not important, because sometimes it becomes necessary to overturn, to penetrate, to destroy these ossified ideas that can block us from being able to make progress on the ground. So we have to fight. We make these ideological struggles. We write these things. We do these PowerPoints. We take the struggles out throughout the world. We have these conferences, and we have other kinds of contests that people have talked about. And ours is the theory that's on the ascendancy. That is very clear. Anybody who's involved in this work in a real way, I'm not talking about people who are bullshitting, you know, who, yeah, we're supposed to. I'm talking about people who are involved in this work in a real way can see that ours is a line that's on the ascendancy. Even as all the other frowning around is happening, ours is on the ascendancy. And that's something that I hope that we can take away from this plenary, as I hope we take away from the plenary that we're going to be doing in February as well. Uhuru. Yeah.
Uhuru! One Africa! One Africa! One nation! Uhuru! Another round of applause for Chairman Amalia Shatella. Thank you, Chairman. Uhuru. So before we move into our reparations and appeal and discussion, I want to bring back Chairwoman Penny Hess. Okay. Discrepancy in the... All right, whatever. So, what's that? All right. Bill Canada and Harris Daniels. Uhuru.
Thank you, Jesse. Let's hear it again for the chairman, Amalia Shatella.
Uhuru.
So Bill and I are here tonight to continue, you know, the tradition that we have in our events of making reparations. And I want to acknowledge first that almost everyone here has participated in, through this conference, an incredible amount of fundraising and making real material solidarity to the party, in which we raised in yesterday's really moving workshop on material solidarity to the African Revolution, over $61,000 in pledges to the work of the African People's Socialist Party over the course of this year. Was it 61,400? 420? Yeah, $61,420. But we know this community event tonight is also an opportunity where we can give. And I know anyone who's just heard the presentations and really taken in, even if you haven't been here for the workshops earlier today, just sees how concrete and right the theory and the practice of African internationalism is, and how the institutions of the party, including this very hall that we're sitting in and standing in tonight, the Akwaba Hall, are so crucial to the economic development and future of the African community here in St. Petersburg and around the world, that tonight we want to, at minimum, raise $200 to support the work of the party. And Ariel over here and Janine over here are going around with baskets. They have pens, slips, and envelopes for people to be able to make contributions of whatever you can. You can also donate anonymously, and we just want to share a little bit about what it is to us to be able to give to this movement. And we all know Bill articulates that in a really great way.
Uhuru, well, I was working on a couple of chants, but I'm just going to say them now, and maybe I'll try them tomorrow morning too. Hey, Occupy, it don't make no sense. How'd you come up with 99%? And hey, Occupy, who taught you math? You blank on yourself, go take a bath. So it's going to require more work, but you know, my heart's in it anyway. But what I did want to say today is, you know, it's always great to be here in St. Pete, to be in the home of African resistance, here in the Uhuru House, and I'm always amazed with the African leaders. I just assume people always had it and always understood the theory, and you know, just amazing people that were around. And you know, here the chairman was a smoker. It was like the man is incredibly buff, you know, and to hear Diop today talk about he was introduced to the party in some form by a rap lyric, "The White House is a rock house." He said he had it on a cassette tape, he put it in his Walkman, and you know, it made me think, like, we talk with people all the time, and I think we lose sight, and maybe, yeah, we lose kind of sight of the influence that we can have. And we may not see it tomorrow, we might not see it, you know, I work with a lot of young people, and I imagine that people, you know, they'll go off to college, they'll do other things with their lives, but they're going to remember some of these things they heard, and it's going to come back. And I feel like we're making great investments in the future of the African Revolution, and to see, Diop running for mayor, and just the incredible man that he is and leader of the African Revolution. I mean, the White House is a rock house. It was understood and deepened, and so that's the investment I see that we make, right here tonight. So I would like to contribute $25 tonight, and I'm looking for people to match me. And Harris?
Uhuru. Well, as Diop would say, you're absolutely correct. If you didn't see that video, that's all right. I'm going to match Bill for $25, and I know there's a lot of other people who can do that as well, but we will take donations of any amount, and just really appreciate everyone for being here and coming into organization as well, because you're not just here for an event to learn about the movement from outside and take in the information, but this is a place where we all can make a home and really can make a career out of being revolutionaries in the white community. And to me, that's invaluable. And we go back in to where the resources are for now and help turn those resources back over to the people they were stolen from, and that's African people. And this movement is really correct in the way that it gives a role for white people and other allies to have a stand in principled solidarity. So I just want to give everyone here throughout this conference another round of applause for your participation, and of course for the leadership of the chairman and the other leaders in the party who are here, and of course our chairwoman Penny Hess. And I think I'll turn it back over to our MC Jesse to lead discussion for tonight. Uhuru.
Uhuru. So we're going to move into the discussion period. So I'd like to ask the speakers to join us up here at this table. And if anybody has any questions or comments, the microphone might be behind that. I can't see it. Is it behind there? The mic is right back there. Anybody have any statements, questions, comments? Trey, if you could go to the mic over here. Oh, Wendy. Uhuru. Couldn't see. There you are.
They shut it off. No, Uhuru, I just wanted to make a comment. I was in on a meeting, it was the USM convention. We flew in and we had dinner, and I took notes for a meeting with the chairman and Diop discussing the campaign for mayor. And that was June. And as I was taking the notes, I was just like, wow, this is like almost impossible to do. And I think this is just the incredibleness of the party. That this campaign was so incredible, so effective, and so amazing, and done in such a short amount of time. And I know that from being in that first meeting and taking those notes of just looking at everything that needed to be done. And I just want to salute the party and the leadership and say Uhuru to Diop and everybody in that campaign, because it was amazing. Uhuru.
Uhuru. I just first of all want to express my gratitude to the chairman, Amalia Shatella, to Diop, Olugbala, Chairwoman Penny Hess, for your presentations today. I couldn't be here all day, but got to hear a little bit this morning, a little bit tonight. I don't really have a single question that comes to the forefront of my mind, but I can say that watching your campaign for mayor from afar, I was astonished, and then I just felt what a treat to hear you talk about it tonight the way that you did. It really reinforced a lot of my feelings that I had when I was witnessing it through all these amazing channels that we have through Uhuru News, and the way we can just feel like we can hear the revolution, we can hear the spirit. Another thing that resonated with me tonight was when the chairman was discussing the volumes of books that were thrown at the party over the years, and he presented this tonight as an obstacle, and they are an obstacle. I can say that from my experience, but I've never I never saw this political education coming my way when I was wading through similar texts over the years. So again, I'm just expressing gratitude. If I had a single question for Diop Olugbala tonight, it would definitely be, I guess, I was wondering, what was the most difficult thing to communicate across the platforms when you're bringing basically African internationalism to what the chairman accurately characterized as a nonviolent contest between quarreling factions, just working for the status quo? What was the most singular challenge bringing those two disparate platforms together for the constituents, for the people, for the voters that we wanted to bring from their homes to the polls? What was the hardest translation that you had to make in that mixture?
I would have to say, actually, hands down, and one thing the chairman would always kind of bring back into the center as we were carrying out the campaign was that, I have to be, a mayoral candidate, the moral authority for the entire city. So it really challenged me to achieve the ability to one, stay on message, but also to articulate the message in such a way where the broader sectors of the city's population, not just Africans, but everybody who could vote, would have to see their interest in uniting with the program that revolves around economic development and social justice for the oppressed and exploited African community, but in such a way that also helps, the white population, and even across class barriers within the African community, etc., in a way that, the broad sectors of the community of the city saw their interests in this program. So, it was a challenge because it required a very, concise type of way to deliver the message, and, it definitely required me to carry myself in a certain type of way, and even also in terms of the question of like organization, because even as we were engaged in the campaign, there were other things going on politically in the city. You had the Occupy Philly thing, and